Okay, everyone, I think we might get started now. This is the panel that you have come to this morning. We're really thrilled that you are joining us. We've got a fantastic range of speakers to talk about the ways in which data is really critical for illuminating inequalities and showing us where we need to focus our energy to build back better. My name is Jo Crawford. I'm Special Advisor with the Quality Insights team at International Women's Development Agency, and I'm moderating today's panel, which I'm very much looking forward to. I've had an active role for about a decade on the steering committee of the Research for Development Impact Network and its predecessors, and RDI conferences are always a highlight. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge that I'm joining this meeting from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past and present for their ongoing custodianship of land that was never ceded. If you would like to, please introduce yourself and the traditional lands from which you are joining in the chat thread. This is an overview of what the panel will cover today. I'll briefly introduce each of the 4 contributors, who will then speak for around about 8 minutes each. We'll then open up for questions, other contributions and discussion. And again, please use the chat thread to add any questions for speakers as we go. First up is my colleague Cheryl Russell, Data Use and Engagement Manager with Quality Insights. With a background in global health and development and training in biostatistics and epidemiology, her technical and conceptual contributions to Equality Insights have included comparing household level wealth indices with individual level poverty measurement data to demonstrate the within household disparities that are often obscured by household level data alone. She has more than 10 years of experience in health and development, working with organisations including the US Centre for Disease Control and Prevention, the Carter Centre, McMaster's University and the University of Queensland and CSIRO in Australia. She'll introduce Equality Insights and its history, why it was developed, and how measure and methodology combine to provide more complete and comprehensive insights into poverty and inequality. Over to you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Jo. Such a nice introduction. I'm calling you all from my home in Hong Kong. And first, I'd like to start with talking about how there is a problem with the data that we're using at the moment to measure global poverty. On the slide is a screenshot from the homepage of the official SDG data site. And contained in that middle circle is an infographic indicating the number of people living in extreme poverty. What it doesn't show is who those people are. What are their characteristics? Are they more likely to be men, women, older, younger? We often don't know the answer to these questions. And the reason for that is that in the majority of cases, poverty continues to be measured at the household level. In 1995, the Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing emphasized the importance of investing in and collecting gender and age disaggregated data on poverty. 25 years on, household level measurement and poverty continues making gender and age disaggregation impossible. Next slide. Household level poverty measurement is problematic not only because it limits disaggregation, but also because it's based on a number of flawed assumptions, such as that all members of a household are equally poor or not poor, that all members of a household experience the same deprivations in various parts of their lives. It also assumes that household resources are shared equally among household members, and that poverty will affect everyone living in the same house in the same way, regardless of gender or any other characteristic that differs between members of the same household. To see who in a household is poor, poverty needs to be measured at the individual level. To end poverty and reduce inequalities, we need poverty data that makes visible the circumstances of women and men and how these circumstances vary. And getting to this requires the development and application of an alternative to household level poverty measurement. In 2008, IWDA was a foundational and funding partner in an international research collaboration that set out to develop and implement just such a measurement tool, an individual level, gender sensitive and multidimensional approach to poverty measurement, informed by the views of women and men with a lived experience of poverty. Building on the legacy of that work, Equality Insights was launched by the International Women's Development Agency in August 2020 as our flagship program. slide. So what makes Equality Insights different to other measures of poverty? Equality Insights is a purpose-built survey developed to provide an alternative to household level measurement to strengthen and complement existing approaches to poverty measurement. Our approach is grounded in participatory research, exploring the dimensions of poverty that matter the most to people with lived experience. And rather than sampling households, we employ an individual level sampling strategy where every adult in a selected household is surveyed. Therefore, we're no longer bound by that assumption that people within the same household experience the same types and levels of deprivation. Now, we know that women are not a homogeneous group, and overlapping barriers and discrimination magnify disadvantage, a truth we've seen far too clearly in this post-COVID context. And the design of many global poverty measurements hides the ways in which being a poor man or a poor woman are different. Patriarchal assumptions about what is important are so deeply embedded in our measurement approaches that the default experience visible in our data is a male one. And one of the main technical aims of Equality Insights is to measure poverty in a way that produces what we call GenderFit data, which is to say the kind of data that is specifically designed to tell us something meaningful about gendered experiences. And there are 5 key characteristics of Equality Insights that support its ability to produce GenderFit data. It aims to collect poverty measurement data in a way that is multidimensional, gender sensitive, scalar, intersectional, and interrogates the experience of poverty within the household. So let's go through each of those characteristics in a little bit more detail. For multidimensional, GenderFit measurement of poverty needs to capture dimensions of life that help us understand the circumstances of diverse women and men that lead to increases in poverty and inequality over time. Equality Insights measures 15 dimensions of life, and those dimensions were identified in the early stages of development by people with lived experience of poverty. And they include food, water, shelter, health, education, energy, sanitation, relationships, clothing, safety, family planning, environment, voice, time use, and work. Gender sensitive. GenderFit data needs to be able to detect gender differences where they exist. This means measuring things that matter to both men and women in a way that is inclusive, something that most global poverty measures fail to do. So for example, in the Equality Insight sanitation dimension, we ask the requisite questions about toilet and washing facilities, but it also includes questions related to menstrual hygiene. Our work dimension seeks to understand deprivations related to unpaid work just as deeply as those related to paid work, understanding that the gender gap in unpaid work has a significant impact on women's ability to actively participate in the paid workforce. Scalar. Quite often, traditional measures of poverty are expressed in binary terms, poor, not poor. Equality Insights is a composite index that measures poverty on a 4-point scale of deprivation from least deprived to most deprived. Scalar measurement helps us to uncover greater insights in the data, often revealing disparities that would have been otherwise obscured if a binary measure of poverty were employed. So for example, one might find that, oh, we've moved ahead, that's okay. Thanks, Jo. Scalar. So for example, one might find that on average, women are more likely to experience deprivation in a specific dimension compared to men. However, that gender disparity might significantly increase as deprivation increases, indicating that gender disparities are greatest among those who are most severely deprived. An insight that would not have been possible if a binary measure of poverty had been used. And indeed, such insights have been uncovered in our past research. Okay, on to intersectional. So while disaggregating by sex is really important, women, as I said, are not a homogeneous group, and individuals are diverse. And collecting individual level data enables us to examine the experience of poverty for individuals with various intersecting characteristics, allowing us to see how deprivation changes over the life course of men and women with various abilities, sociocultural backgrounds, and living in different geographic locations. Within household. In addition to intersectional analysis, individual level data enables us to explore the various experiences of deprivation within a household and identify inequalities that exist between household members. So here's an example of a real household that we surveyed in the Solomon Islands last year. We have a couple here in their 50s, living with their adult son and his family. When we interrogate the food dimension score of each surveyed household member, what we see is that the male head of household fell in our least deprived category, but his wife and son were both categorized as most deprived by our measure, demonstrating that there can be extreme inequalities and deprivation within the household. Had we collected household level data in a more traditional way, likely the information would have been collected from the male head of household, and the assumption would have been made that everyone else in the household experienced the same levels and type of deprivation as he did, rendering the deprivations experienced by other household members identified here completely invisible in the data. Now, just in case you're not convinced of the value of gender-sensitive individual level multidimensional poverty measurement, I want to share with you a piece of preliminary analysis that we're conducting using data collected, again, from the Solomons. In addition to measuring deprivation in the 15 dimensions of life that I mentioned, the Quality Insight Survey also collects data on asset ownership as a way of measuring financial well-being. The list of assets included is really similar to that of other large multi-topic surveys. And with this data, what we were able to do was create a household level wealth index by employing the same methodology that's used in the demographic and health surveys. The wealth index is a very commonly used proxy for measuring poverty, and it basically ranks households from least to most asset rich, and then groups households into quintiles, with the first quintile containing our poorest 20% of the sample, and the fifth containing the wealthiest. We then ran an analysis that compared our household level wealth index with our individual level measure of multidimensional poverty. The question we were asking was, well, how often are those wealthy households, in terms of asset wealth, home to individuals experiencing deprivation in any of the other dimensions that we measure? And what we found was that across nearly all dimensions, a majority, and often a vast majority, of asset wealthy households were actually home to at least one individual experiencing deprivation as measured by Equality Insights. And it is these individuals that we're referring to when we say invisible poor, because the experiences of these people would have been completely invisible in the data if not for the use of an individual level and gender sensitive multidimensional method of measuring poverty. So if we're going to build back better, leave no one behind, and end poverty in all of its forms, then we need data that is capable of identifying poverty in all of its forms and highlights inequality, not just between households, but within them. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with Equality Insights. Thank you. Back to you, Josie.
Sorry, folks. Just having the presenter function just creates a small number of difficulties for me. Thanks so much, Cheryl. I now want to move to introduce Vaela Falefehi Ngai, the Director of the Women's Development Division for the Solomon Islands Government. Vaela graduated with a Bachelor of Education majoring in Education and Mathematics in 2006 from the University of the South Pacific, followed by a postgraduate certificate in Gender Studies in 2018. She's currently in a village in Malaita province in Solomon Islands with unstable communications access. So she's gone to the most extraordinary lengths to speak with us today. She's recorded her remarks that accompany her slides and sent these this morning, floating in a canoe on a lagoon to get internet access. I'll advance the slides at this end. Vaela is hopeful that she'll be able to join us later for discussion. And all I can say is bring on that undersea communications cable for the Pacific. I will now ask my colleague, Melissa, if you're able to start the audio for Vaela.
In what way would you...
Hello and greetings from Solomon Islands. Today I am speaking as a government official, policymaker and advocate whose job is to promote gender equality and the rights of women in a context of significant gender inequality, including high prevalence rate of domestic violence and the continuous low participation and representation of women in positions of decision-making at all levels, including in Parliament. The relevance and importance of concrete data, particularly disaggregated data in this context, cannot be overemphasized. In order to advance gender equality, we need to be able to reveal the gender inequalities that exist. In the context of Solomon Islands, where we are communal societies, disaggregated data is vital as it shows who is most affected in what ways and to what extent. Without disaggregated data, it is more difficult, especially if there is a long list of priorities and limited resources. I may know the broad outlines of gender inequality, but without quality gender data about scope and scale, it is much more difficult to lobby and advocate to get support to prioritize gender equality and allocate resources in national budgets. And while here in the Solomon Islands, there has been increased interest in gender by other line ministries and sectors in more recent years, the need for the right data is critical in sustaining their interest and attention and helping them see that addressing inequalities is their priority too. To illustrate this, I will show you some selected findings from an individual deprivation measure, in short IDM, study in 2 provinces in the Solomon Islands in 2020, completed just as COVID-19 was beginning to impact the region. The study was a collaboration between International Women's Development Agency and the UN World Food Programme as part of a wider program partnership with Australian National University supported by DFAT. There were 1,862 respondents from 849 households with equal numbers of men and women respondents. The aim of the study was to gain insights into the economic, social, political, and environmental dimensions of the lives of men and women in Central and Guadalcanal provinces. The study looked at 15 dimensions. For instance, shelter is typically measured at the household level. The results on the screen show the importance of individual level, gender-sensitive measurement for making differences by gender visible. As you can see, more men than women had adequate bedding. More women than men had experienced anxiety over the possibility of eviction. More men than women said their dwelling ownership was recognized by the government. This example illustrates why individual level data matters for understanding how people's context intersects with public policy. In the context of the COVID-19 pandemic that has specific recommendations about hygiene practices, understanding who is experiencing what kind of deprivation is critical to assessing risk and vulnerability and developing effective targeted local and national action that meets people in their context. As you can see through the IDM data, it was revealed that women were significantly more deprived in sanitation than men, on indicators ranging from not having a place to wash their hands at home, lacking sufficient water for domestic needs, to having no toilet facilities at home and having no private space to change during menstruation. In education, the study found significant gender and age differences in education attainment and functional skills, highlighting the importance of having data that can be disaggregated by both gender and age. Age matters to illuminate the cumulative impact of disadvantage over time and to understand the implications when women's productive and reproductive lives overlap. As you can see, education deprivation in the sample increased with age and the gender gap increased at each age group. Measuring in a way that illuminates intersectional inequalities is critical to understanding how circumstances vary over a life course. It provides information that enables policymakers to focus efforts and to help to connect policy to people. There were significant differences by gender in relation to voice in both household and public domains. As you can see, significantly more women than men were deprived or very deprived. More men than women had sole decision-making power over household finances, large purchases, duration of their work, duration of their study, and social commitments, whereas women had more decision-making power over everyday expenses. The data also showed a relationship with age, with older adults experiencing less deprivation other than in very old age where deprivation substantially increased. These next two slides, you can see that women and men in Solomon Islands spend their time differently. Seeing this in data can help inform policies and programs. This example illustrates the importance of measuring assets at the individual level, as opposed to the typical measuring of this at household level. This is important in revealing the different economic realities of women and men, and the ways in which current inequalities shape and constrain future options and opportunities. These are only some of the selected findings that I hope clearly illustrate the relevance of individual level and gender-sensitive data for policymakers and gender advocates. Linking data producers and users, duty bearers and advocates is very important in supporting the relevance and use of resulting disaggregated data and strengthening experiences in using gender data generally. To ensure this, the IDM study in Solomon Islands established the Solomon Islands Steering Committee, bringing together government ministries and relevant line departments and civil society organizations, a multi-stakeholder steering committee involving different expertise, experiences, and perspectives, whom guided and facilitated data collection, helping to ensure the work was focused and relevant and connected to existing processes and mechanisms. Having disaggregated data is vital for this committee for purposes of lobbying and advocating for gender. An example is how this study is currently helping support the Ministry of Women, Youth, Children and Family Affairs in the development of a first ever gender and women policy for Central Islands Province, strengthening its efforts to mainstream gender at the provincial level. I want to take this opportunity to talk about the implications of gender data for COVID-19 recovery. There is no doubt that COVID-19 has only underlined the importance of having data that shows differences by gender, age, disability, and intersections of these. Without it, we will see existing inequalities continue to worsen. For the Solomon Islands government, COVID-19 recovery is our priority now. Concerning is the fact that this recovery theme is focused on the productive and revenue generating sector. In order that the recovery process is gender sensitive and clearly brings in the human perspective to the recovery process, comprehensive individual level gender sensitive data is crucial. Crucial for essential COVID-19 related policy and legislative developments and reforms, and for targeting programs and resources effectively to meet people where they are. The Ministry of Women, Youth, Children and Family Affairs and the National Statistics Office are advocating within government and to donors for a follow-up nationally representative IDM or now Equality Insight study to provide this data to support gender responsive recovery. For us, gender data is essential, not an optional extra. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening.
Thanks so much, Vaela. I'm so pleased that she was able to find a spot where she could both record this work. She was doing some work on violence against women in the province of Malaita and record it and send it to us. And I'm hopeful that she may be able to join us for the next session. Sorry, for the discussion. Excuse me if I'm hesitating. It's the challenge of working across a couple of screens and laptops to get all the right documents open. I apologise also for a couple of places where I've moved the slides inadvertently, and will do my best to ensure that doesn't happen again. I want to introduce now my colleague Melissa Meinhart, who's the Statistics and Analysis Specialist with the Equality Insights team. Her research background combines econometrics and psychometrics to critically measure and examine underlying constructs that perpetuate or mitigate gender inequalities and social discordance in low and middle income countries. I'll now pass to Melissa to speak to the development of Equality Insights Rapid, which is the current work that we're undertaking and the latest innovation from the Equality Insights team. Over to you, Melissa.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Jo. It's a pleasure to be here, everyone. Let me turn my video back on. For my presentation, I'm going to focus on how we are moving forward with a rapid variant for the Equality Insights survey. So going on to the next slide. Actually, if you can go through all of the animations, I apologize. I forgot to take those off. So when designing the rapid variant of Equality Insights, we wanted to build from the 12-year history of the foundational work that established, oh, my computer is frozen, sorry. Hold on just a second, got some backups. All right, so when designing the rapid variant of Equality Insights, we wanted to build from the 12-year history of our foundational work that established the conceptual frame and survey tool for Equality Insights. From the onset of Equality Insights, we've integrated both technical and normative considerations, and this continues to be true for Equality Insights Rapid. From a technical perspective, looking at that top line, we really want to be providing a robust and complementary measure of poverty and inequality that makes the gendered aspects of this experience visible. And then from a normative perspective, we want to shift the understanding of data adequacy, both in what gets measured, so i.e. multidimensional, and how it gets measured, meaning individual level and gender sensitive insights into the effects of age, life stage, disability, and within household differences. So the rapid variant of the survey should be aligned with these aims. And now our immediate focus for rapid is to support, we can stay on this slide. Our immediate focus for rapid is to support the COVID response in the Pacific. However, our wider strategic aim is to enable individual level gender sensitive measurement of multidimensional poverty working at scale, right? So at a global level, ideally. In order to address the challenges of developing a remote and rapid survey, our team, alongside our Global Technical Advisory Group, identified 4 key areas for consideration to create a remote and rapid iterate of Equality Insights. These considerations are highlighted within this slide, and I'm going to provide an overview of each of them in the slides to come. So we can go to the next slide now. Great. So first we began to discuss the remote modality considerations. Between limitations on international travel and the need to limit face-to-face contact, surveys such as Equality Insights are facing the daunting challenge of trying to pivot to a remote surveying modality. So after completing a close review of available remote modalities, the Equality Insights team discussed these options with our Global Technical Advisory Group. They're a core element of the work that we do, who endorsed the computer-assisted telephone interviewing, i.e. CATI approach, as the primary survey modality for Equality Insights Rapid. A CATI survey is better suited to reach a representative sample in the Pacific than, say, an online survey, and it has better response rates and turnaround time than something like a mail-based survey. And then lastly, unlike other phone-based surveys, it can accommodate a greater survey length and doesn't require literacy among respondents. Of course, CATI is not without limitations, and some drawbacks are being assessed and mitigated, including the higher costs than many of these modalities and potential issues with sampling biases. So with that in mind, from our end, the modality and sampling considerations are really being addressed together. You can go to the next slide. Before talking about the sampling modalities, though, I want to review the item reduction process, right? So we know that we want to go with the CATI modality to implement the survey, but we also need to reduce the number of items within the Equality Insights survey. So phone administration of CATI requires a much shorter survey to retain respondents, as well as to promote validity of responses. So our team is thankfully experienced in item reduction, as the current Equality Insights survey has resulted from work with the individual deprivation measure, whereby we reduced a pool of 301 questions to 183. For rapid, the ultimate goal is to have around 3 questions per dimension. As Cheryl mentioned, we have 15 of those. So that way we can have a household survey of roughly around 10 minutes for one person in the household to complete, and an individual survey of around 20 to 25 minutes for every adult household member to complete. We are currently in the midst of a 10-week process of reviewing the survey to develop Equality Insights Rapid, whereby we combine statistical testing, including bivariate, multivariate analyses, and normative judgments to identify how to best reduce items while still retaining the power of the survey for all 15 dimensions, plus assets and demographics. Importantly, we're taking close notes and documentation of this process that informed the item reduction, so that we can also inform partners in the broader development community once we have finalized the item reduction process. You can go to the next slide. The third consideration is country selection. So next, bearing in mind that we have funding to conduct equality insights in 2 countries, and that we want to start as soon as possible to make data available to inform gender responsive recovery, the team needed to prioritize country selection. For a range of pragmatic and strategic reasons, we made a threshold decision at the onset to only consider implementing the survey in sovereign Pacific Island countries for the purpose of this specific program. When we undertook the shortlisting process, there were a number of considerations that we bore in mind. Prioritizing mobile phone coverage, broadband coverage to a certain extent, availability of secondary data or recency of other national surveys, existing IWDA networks, and the overall COVID context. After we developed a shortlist, we consulted both our Global Technical Advisory Group and our donor DFAT. Right now, we're currently at the stage of initial in-country consultations to determine the potential of implementing the survey to support a gender-sensitive and data-informed COVID recovery. Recognizing the implicit challenges and ongoing changes that come with working in a COVID context, we do hope that the country selection process will proceed soon in the coming months so that we may complete data collection in at least 1 country before the end of 2021. We can go to the next slide. And so this last consideration is sampling methodology, my personal favorite. So given the sparse mobile phone coverage, we needed to utilize creative sampling methods to collect a representative sample. While conversations are ongoing, at present, we endeavor to utilize a multi-frame sampling approach with CATI as the primary modality of data collection. Now, for those of you who are less familiar, multi-frame sampling refers to the use of more than 1 sampling frame, whereby independent samples are collected from each frame to derive a combined data set for the target population. First developed to reduce the high cost and to collect data populations inclusive of hard to reach subgroups, this approach supports the dual objectives of containing cost while maximizing coverage. In a brief overview, frame A, the direct CATI approach, optimizes random digit dialing and potentially quota or weighted sampling that you may be more familiar with the ongoing remote surveying in the Pacific. And then frame B utilizes a partnership CATI approach, which enables us to connect with households who do not have phones by safely providing phones to facilitate remote surveying. This would be the first time such a sampling approach has been utilized for population-based survey in the COVID context. So we're really closely considering the potential risks of such an approach. If successfully implemented, this approach would better enable a representative sample from remote surveying techniques. And then we can go to the last slide. So in closing, our team continues to examine these 4 priority considerations while developing RAPID. Just to bear in mind that this is a process we're in the midst of at the moment. With plans to roll out RAPID by the end of this year, we look forward to keeping the development community abreast of our findings, as we deeply believe in the technical and normative value of Equality Insights RAPID. If you're curious to learn more about our work, please make sure to check out our website and our Twitter, just to plug those here, and which will be made available at the end of the presentation. And then moreover, I'm available to discuss any of these considerations in more depth, either during the Q&A or offline. So thanks so much for your engagement with Equality Insights, including Equality Insights Rapid. And now I'll hand things over to our director, Jo Pradela.
Well, briefly, I'll just pop in before Jo comes in, just to thank Melissa and introduce my colleague, Jo Pradela, who's the Director of Knowledge, Translation and Equality Insights. Many of you in the Australian development community will know Joanna Pradela from her work with IWDA for some years, but also with ACFID before that, including a period with the Research for Development Impact Network. So she's no stranger. And her job now is to talk to you about the other aspects of change beyond great ideas. Over to you, Jo.
Thanks, Jo. Thanks, everyone. I could listen to my team talk about this stuff all day, so this has been exciting for me too. But as Jo said, we're all at this conference because we believe that powerful ideas and research excellence matter very much in development, but we also know that in and of themselves, they aren't sufficient for change. So I'm going to talk you through some of the other work that the team is doing and IWDA more broadly that supports and enables uptake and use of the groundbreaking measurement initiative. And please use the Q&A function. I'm going to try and be as quick as possible so that we do have time to have some dialogue and some questions. So what you're looking at on this screen is IWDA's, a snapshot of IWDA's strategic plan theory of change, which includes an explicit focus on systemic change. And Equality Insights is a central part of that work in three really important ways. So first, we contribute to systemic change by redefining and then measuring what matters. The second is that we bring visibility to the diversity of women's lives through that process. And the third is that we're shifting power by putting data in the hands of gender equality advocates and women's rights organizations so that when they come to decision-making tables, they're empowered. Next slide, Jo. So IWDA has been involved in spearheading this change towards gender-sensitive poverty measurement since 2008. We made our largest ever contribution of community-raised funds to this initiative, and we provided significant in-kind support to the foundational research that delivered the world first individual level gender-sensitive measure of multidimensional poverty. We are deeply committed to this project because, as you heard my colleague say earlier, patriarchal assumptions about what is important are so deeply embedded in our measurement approaches that the default experience that shows up in data too often is the male one. What this means is that decision makers and change agents are left trying to act on gendered poverty without gendered data. And we see the solution to this problem as twofold. We need to address the technical elements of change, and we need to address the political elements of change. So the work we've been doing to create a technical alternative that you've just heard my colleagues talking about is what makes it possible to break from current practice and do something different. But we know that incumbency has inertia and that there are real and vested interests in the way that things are currently done. So we're constantly looking at the politics of change and wrapping around our data work actions that tackle those politics, making it not only possible, but hopefully likely for that change to occur. And I just want to share today briefly about three ways that we're doing this in our current work. The first is that we're building constituencies for data's use. The second is addressing the politics of access to data. And the third is by building demand, working both inside the system and outside of the system. And I'll just touch on each of these in slightly more detail going ahead. So why build constituencies for data use? Well, our theory of change holds that gender inequality and gendered poverty will be prioritized if there are two things. The first is evidence of specific need, and the second is demand for action to address that need by a constituency. So this approach is also supported by learning and action that IWDA more broadly has been doing recently in moving from a programmatic approach to an organizational-wide approach on movement strengthening. So we've articulated the following pillars as necessary to the creation of a strong and vibrant movement. I know it's a bit small on your screen. Hopefully you can read that. But otherwise, if you can't, I'll just read it out briefly. A strong and vibrant feminist movement are groups of people and organization with some connection to constituency, who invest in relationships of trust, who can leverage their diversity, who have a co-developed and intersectional feminist analysis of issues to collaboratively realize a common vision for change. And we've really built on this concept of movement strengthening in our work to build constituencies for data's use. So in each country where we collect data, we establish a multi-stakeholder steering group. And you heard Vaela speak about the one that we set up in the Solomon Islands. So this steering group brings together actors who have common interests in gender equality. And we use the data collection process from the planning for that work all the way through to the data validation and analysis as a mechanism for supporting in-country gender advocates to strengthen their own relationships of trust, work across their diversity, build a shared analysis, and collaborate on a common vision. And by building these multi-stakeholder groups, we're aiming to increase the strength of this constituency. We have actors outside government who can call for change in an accountability sense, and the actors who are inside government have a bolstered hand by that call for accountability as they try and navigate for change through internal systems. Next slide. So the second really important embedded activity that we undertake is to try and address the politics of access to data. We know that specialized data isn't always publicly available, or it may not be presented in a way that generalists and non-statistical specialists can deeply engage with it. So as part of our work to tackle this issue, we're developing an online interface that will allow de-identified and secure access to the data and insights arising from our survey. The aim of the tool is that it will be visually engaging and demystifying, making it possible for non-statistical experts to directly engage with the data, to explore its relevance, and to incorporate it into their own work. It will also allow for those with more statistical experience and knowledge to delve more further into the data. And so creating this interface also anticipates the fact that change is enabled by a diffusion of ideas. We don't pretend to know all of the directions from which change might happen, but by making the information available online, we're creating the opportunity for change agents, wherever they're located, to pick up and run with this work without having to have or needing to create a specific relationship with IWDA. We are making it possible for people to lead from wherever they are. Next slide. So just very quickly, we are seeking to build demand for this innovation by working both inside the system and outside of it. And this goes to one of the questions that was asked in the Q&A before as well. So inside the system, we engage with processes at national and regional levels to have our innovative work incorporated into frameworks and tools and guidance that will help support the data into further use. And doing this also helps to confirm the credibility and robustness and the relevance of the technical work for both data producers and users. And it helps to normalize this as a new source of data. Working outside the system, we take a strategic communications approach or an advocacy approach to shifting what is considered adequate data. So gender data is as political as any other part of the gender equality struggle, and more and better gender data is as much a question of political will as it is of measurement approaches. And so one way to shift the norms around what's considered adequate data is to make visible the costs of the status quo. These costs have been normalized to the point of invisibility, but we know that the people who are bearing them are largely women, people with a disability, non-binary people, and those who don't conform to the cis-het norm. So we want to raise the political cost of continuing to fund and collect data that's hiding the experience of so many people, because on the other hand, the opportunity costs are real. There are finite resources being invested into data, and we know that money spent on gender unaware data is money that isn't supporting gender transformative change. Next slide. So I'm really excited to end my presentation on this high note. Collective efforts are bearing fruit in this regard. At this week's Generation Equality Forum in Paris, IWDA, along with other gender advocates, have managed to get gender data on the agenda quite firmly. Collection and analysis of individual level gender sensitive poverty data has been named as a priority to accelerate implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. And we have seen new multi-stakeholder collaborations and coalitions that have formed to support and promote the expansion of feminist data to inform a feminist future as well. So we can happily say that change is underway. And on that note of optimism, I will hand you back to colleagues and to your questions.
Thanks so much, Jo, and thank you, everybody. I'll just for a moment leave the contact details up there, so maybe you can grab a screenshot. Also, just a brief note to say that I'm speaking this afternoon in a session at 3:15 on the participatory foundations of equality insights, if you are interested in hearing more about this measure. I'm going to stop sharing now so that we have faces up on the screen and open it up for questions. I don't know how we physically do this.
We have a question that says, will the rapid survey be adapted to suit the country context? So maybe Melissa or Cheryl, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a really great question. And core to Rapid is we want to have a survey that is comparable and transferable across contexts. But of course, the country level considerations are important as well. And so core to this work is developing a steering committee in country to review the survey, advise on any potential tweaks that may need to be made, and certainly at that time, once we have the country selected and our steering committees in place, if there are pressing needs or interest at the country level, there are opportunities to perhaps integrate those to a certain extent. Though I mean, it's important to for us to retain the global measure. So potential sort of add-on questions are possible, but will need to be taken into consideration. Kind of on a case-by-case basis, but it's certainly feasible and something that we want to consider because we want this product to be of specific value at the country level.
And just to add to that in sort of very specific terms, for example, inequality insights, we have questions about the type of energy used in the home in relation to lighting, heating, and cooking. And in a context where perhaps heating the home is not something that is makes sense in a certain region, that question would be excluded from the measure. So trying to look at how the types of questions we have fit for the context, our assets as well. Depending on where you are based, the assets might be slightly different or called differently. So we'll at least use languages, especially that makes that differentiation more applicable to the local context.
Thanks, Cheryl. I'm just looking at the list of questions here to see if there are any other ones. I think was it Sarah Webb asked about traction and advocating for wider use yet. I think Jo Pradela answered that pretty comprehensively, but I suppose one of the challenges in terms of the trajectory to use for new measures is that you are trying to seed interest at the same time as build the infrastructure and scaffolding that enables data use, that enables use of the survey with a small team. And so we're kind of really at that sort of pivot point where there is a lot of interest and the capacity to meet that, while also iterating a new short version for COVID use, for example. We're at that point where there is interest, you're doing more things, you're trying to build the infrastructure and scaffolding. In some ways, it's like the broader challenge for feminist organisations of being and doing. So you have to exist to do, you have to do to get the funding. And so, we're big advocates and champions of increased funding for gender data as well, but hugely value the support that the Australian government has put into really keeping this, this vision of individual level gender sensitive measurement alive. Do other colleagues have any other remarks to add to that? And do we have any other questions?
Actually, I might just add to that as well, noting that Vaela isn't here, but just reiterating what she highlighted in her presentation. So what we had the opportunity to do with some DFAT and World Food Program funding in 2020 was to do a 2-province representative survey. And from that, which was a bit of a low risk opportunity for the government of the Solomon Islands to have more exposure to the work that we do and the insights that the survey produces, they've now decided that they would like this data at a nationally representative level. And they internally, so Vaela, who works for the Ministry of Women, and other champions from the Solomon Islands themselves have created an advocacy pathway to try and stand up a nationally representative survey. So we also can see that the change is iterative, and sometimes with innovation, it's that sort of exposure to and realizing what this measure can produce. And then we can see the next big step coming from that.
Thank you, Jo. I mean, that's our experience often when we speak to stakeholders about this data. When they get inside and they start to see the ability to both see an overview and then drill down to understand what is driving what and what dimensions of deprivation are related and contributing to those kind of practical barriers to change. People get extremely excited, and so in a sense it's the familiarity with the data that often brings that sense of interest and enthusiasm and traction for wider use.
Jo, there's a question that you're probably best placed to answer in the chat from Zoe about the extent to which there was diversity and in what ways, in what mattered for people as part of the initial process to refining the 15 dimensions.
I'm sorry, Jo, is that question for me? I just can't see the question. Zoe. So thank you, Zoe. Look, in a sense, the easy way to do that is say to come to the presentation at 3:15 this afternoon, because I will go through that. To be more specific, there was quite a lot of similarity in terms of the, from a gender perspective, in terms of the priorities. Quite often people were based on gender prioritising for different reasons. So you could really see that interaction between gendered roles and responsibilities and the kinds of impacts that people felt when they experienced a deprivation in a particular area. So because women and men in different contexts were responsible for different kinds of doing different kinds of work in the household, they were experiencing affective impact of deprivations differently. And so you were getting them talking about, say, for example, access to infrastructure being a priority, but for different reasons. For women, it was around safety and security. For men, it was around accessing work. So the same kind of thing might be being prioritised for different kinds of reasons. But as I said, there's the presentation this afternoon. I'll run through some of the slides, including a slide with the gender differences, and can certainly also share those if you want to follow up afterwards. Additional different dimensions ever included or needed to take account of what matters. Look, this really goes to Melissa's point earlier about the idea of where we started on this was improving on existing limitations of quantitative measurement. And so we deliberately set out to try to have a measure that's comparable over time and place. And so there's always that tension between making sure that something's relevant in a particular context on the one hand, and on the other, having something that does enable eventually comparison over time and place. Absolutely, there's a potential to add additional questions or additional modules that you think are particularly relevant, or to drop questions, for example, about use of fuel for heating if you're in a tropical climate. So those options are certainly definitely there. Sorry, I'm looking at There's a question here about really what are the key policy issues that governments are interested in addressing. Look, I think that obviously really depends on the context in which you're working in. But I think what you heard from Vaela, and that's our experience of working in the Solomon Islands most recently, is that people often just don't have insight into the particular problems that are experiencing particular populations in specific places. And so the policy issues often will depend on what the mandate is of that policy maker that we're engaging with. But in general, what they are interested in understanding is who's experiencing what where. And they can't see that in data that is population level or in trade statistics or in GDP. If you want to understand the ways in which the general development context is impacting on particular populations, you need to see that individual level data. And it's that potential to get those insights that help you know where you're going to target and focus that seems to be really driving the policymakers that we engage with. And often they're ones who have mandates for gender responsive policy making, but without gender data to inform and drive those policies. I'm very conscious of time, which is that we have about 1 minute to go. Do we have any other questions? I think not. Do I have colleagues who want to add anything? So I want to thank everybody who's been here today for joining us. One of my colleagues might pop the Equality Insights URL into the chat thread. You can find information there, including links back to the work on which we build, done through the individual deprivation measure. The work on Equality Insights Rapid that we've talked about today is really, you're very much getting an introduction to the thick of it. We will be sharing the documentation work to develop the measure and the work that we're doing on the Equality Insights website as quickly as we can. We're grateful to Vaela for the efforts that she put in to get her audio to us, and to all of my colleagues for the work that they've done, and to all of you for coming to join us today. We know you had choices and options, and we appreciate that you came and joined us for this. The recording will be available afterwards, and I look forward to seeing some of you this afternoon on the participatory background to the IDM and Equality Insights at 3:15. Thanks so much, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.